So, have you ever been on vacation and noticed something weird? The price for a hotel room, or a jet ski rental, or even a fancy dinner is almost exactly the same everywhere you look. Well, that's not just a coincidence, and it's definitely not the free market working in some perfect way. No, what you're seeing is a carefully played, high-stakes game. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the manager's playbook for pricing in an oligopoly. We'll use the real-world example of the tourist hub Tanjung Lesung to see how all this theory actually plays out on the ground. All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll tackle the fundamental problem that every manager in one of these markets faces, the pricing dilemma. Then, we'll get into the clever solution they've come up with, a kind of unspoken handshake called Tacit Collusion. From there, we'll see how that plays out in the real world with follow-the-leader strategies. And finally, we'll break down what happens when you can't compete on price, something I like to call the amenities arms race. Okay, let's put you in the hot seat. Imagine you're the manager of a big resort. In a market with just a handful of other major players, you wake up every single day facing a classic dilemma. On one hand, you can cooperate, play nice, and keep prices high so that everyone, including you, makes a really healthy profit. On the other hand, there's always that temptation. You could slash your prices just for a little while and try to steal a huge chunk of the market. But that is a huge gamble, because it could easily trigger an all-out price war, a race to the bottom where, let's be honest, nobody wins. And this whole problem exists because of the market structure itself, an oligopoly. The single most important word here, the one you absolutely need to remember, is interdependence. See, this isn't like a perfectly competitive market where you're just one of thousands of sellers and your choices don't really matter. Oh no. In an oligopoly, you're a major player. Your pricing decisions, your ad campaigns, your plans to build a new wing, none of that happens in a bubble. Every move you make is a signal that your competitors are watching, analyzing, and getting ready to react to. It's less like a market and a whole lot more like a game of high-stakes chess. So, knowing that a price war is basically mutual destruction, how do smart managers handle this? Well, they often find a way to cooperate through what we call an unspoken handshake. Because let's be clear, getting together in a secret meeting to fix prices, what we call explicit collusion, is incredibly illegal. We're talking massive fines, even jail time. So over time, these firms have gotten very, very good at coordinating their prices without ever actually talking to each other. And that brings us to the key mechanism, tacit collusion. This is not about some secret backroom deal. It's a shared understanding that just sort of emerges. It comes from watching each other day in and day out and learning to predict how your rivals will react to any move you make. It's this delicate, strategic dance of signals and responses that lets everyone keep prices high without ever breaking the law. Let's make this real. This slide shows you exactly how that dance works. Let's go back to Tanjung Lesung. Imagine the biggest, most established resort there decides to test the waters and raises its prices. Now, do the other resorts immediately copy them? Nope. That would be too risky. Instead, as you see in step 2, they watch. They watch like hawks. They check the lead resort's online bookings, they monitor their parking lot, they're looking at everything. They're asking, are people still booking rooms at that higher price? If the answer is yes, if occupancy stays high, it sends a powerful signal to the whole market. Customers are willing to pay more, and only then, as you see in step 3, will the other resorts quietly raise their own prices to match. And this slide right here is absolutely critical for you as a future manager to understand. On the left, you've got explicit collusion. That's a formal agreement. It's a cartel. It's a crime, and the risk of getting caught is huge. On the right, you have tacit collusion. It's way more subtle. It's an informal understanding that's based on public information and observation. Now, regulators might not love it, but it's incredibly hard to prove that an illegal agreement ever took place. For a manager, it's the holy grail. You get all the benefits of stable, high prices while staying in a legally defensible gray area. So let's dive deeper into the mechanics of how this actually works day to day. Because tacit collusion isn't just some abstract theory from a textbook, it's something managers practice all the time. The entire system really boils down to a simple game of follow the leader. You see, in most of these stable oligopolies, one firm naturally becomes the price leader. It's usually the biggest one, the one with the most market share, or maybe the oldest, most respected brand. The other firms, the followers, they basically let the leader do all the hard work. They assume the leader has the fancy research teams and the data to figure out the perfect price that maximizes profit for everyone. So when the leader announces its new rates, it creates a powerful signal for the entire industry, and everyone else just falls in line. It creates the predictability that managers absolutely love. But what happens if some maverick, some small player, decides to break the unwritten rules? Let's zoom in on the waterfront for a second. Imagine one jet ski operator sees a big tour group coming and thinks, aha, I'll cut my price and snag the whole group. In a different kind of market, that might be a brilliant move. But not in an oligopoly. The reaction, as our source material shows, is immediate. Within moments, not hours, moments, every other jet ski operator on that beach has dropped their price to match. So the first guy's advantage, it's gone, poof. So let me ask you, as a manager who just tried to make that move, what did you actually gain? Did you get any new customers? Or did you just lower the price for everyone and wreck the day's profits for the entire market, including yourself? The answer, of course, is that you gained nothing. And this little real-world story is a perfect example of a classic economic model called the kinked demand curve. Now, here's how it works in simple terms. The theory says that for you as a manager in an oligopoly, your demand curve has a sharp kink right at the current market price. If you try to lower your price, like our jet ski operator did, everyone else is forced to follow you down. So you won't gain many new customers. We say your demand is inelastic. But if you try to raise your price, your rivals will just stay put and happily steal all your customers who are looking for a better deal. In that direction, your demand is super elastic. The takeaway for you as a manager is crystal clear. There is a huge disincentive to move the price in either direction. And that's what creates the incredibly rigid prices we see in the real world. And this price rigidity leads us to our final and maybe most important question. If competing on price is basically off limits, where does all that competitive energy go? I mean, these are aggressive, smart companies. They still want to win. So how do they fight? Well, the answer is that the competition doesn't just disappear. It just moves. The entire battlefield shifts away from the price tag. When price is locked down, firms are forced to fight it out through non-price competition. The rivalry actually becomes more intense. It's just focused on different things. So what does this fight look like? Well, you see it in a few key areas. First, you get massive marketing budgets, huge advertising campaigns to convince you their resort is somehow different or better. Second, you see endless upgrades to amenities. This is the arms race. If one resort builds a fancy new spa, you can bet their rival is already drawing up plans for an even bigger one. And third, you see these constant, really expensive renovation cycles to make sure their property always looks newer and more modern than the competition. This chart says it all, really. Look where the money is going. The tiny sliver of budget that might go to a price discount is dwarfed by the massive investment in marketing and new facilities. And this is a crucial insight for you as a manager. That piece you get from avoiding a price war, it comes at a cost. And that cost is a new, incredibly expensive war fought with marketing dollars and construction crews. It might be great for consumers who get nicer hotels, but it can eat away at the very profits that the price stability was supposed to protect. Which brings us to our final question, the one you'll have to grapple with if you ever manage in a market like this. Have you actually built a stable, profitable paradise? Or are you just living through a fragile truce, a house of cards that's one desperate competitor, one new upstart, or one economic downturn away from collapsing into an all-out war? Navigating that tension, walking that strategic tightrope every single day, well, that's the real challenge of managing in an oligopoly.